Good morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello, Robin. Hello, hello, hello.
Happy New Year.
Brilliant, 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 brilliant. I'm glad you're here. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Most exciting, most exciting. How are you, Robin? How are you? How are you?
I am doing well, thank you.
Yes, that sounds like it. So, how did everything go down in Florida? And just how was everything?
Everything is status quo. Dad is definitely beginning to transition, but he just was not, after having all the proper stuff taken care of him, he just was not ready to go yet. But he's definitely starting to shift because I went down there at the end of the year to see him again. And
Yeah.
what was nice is that on the time that I saw him, he actually said my name and said, I love you. But then after that, when the nurse came in, he couldn't remember his name, my name. And they said that a couple of times they caught him trying to take a bowel movement on a chair. So he's definitely starting to shift.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Wow, wow, wow. And did the thing get sorted with he's okay with his will and everything like that? That's all done, taken
Well,
care of?
I mean, I was able to say to him, that I don't know whether I'm going to be able to keep the house or anything. I mean,
Oh,
not that he can do anything about it, not that he can change anything, but I was able to say, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Um,
all right.
I I did release both of the cars though. I was able to get the cars into my name, and then one I donated and the other one I just sold to the neighbor.
Oh, wonderful, 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 wonderful. So that's stuff taken care of at least. Yeah, yeah.
It's two things that now are out of the house. And um I was never, the one car was, I am so glad that finally we're rid of it.
Yeah,
That was the one brother's car, and I'm just glad that that's finally gone. And
good, good. Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
other car I was never planning on keeping anyway.
Gotcha, gotcha. Oh, excellent, excellent. So everything is pretty much resolved, taken care of, and whenever things needed, it's all easy to resolve now, yeah? More or less. As easy as it can be, I should say. Yeah.
Easy as it can be.
Yeah.
I'm getting my own home up here. I mean, Kevin's definitely going to have to start going down with his job. He's definitely going to be in Florida a lot more.
Wow.
But um as far as dad's house, I'm just going to keep everything status quo. And, if it's meant to be when the time comes,
Yeah.
it's going to be. Otherwise, no, it's going to be what it's going to be. I
Yeah.
have resolved
Deal with it
myself
then.
to that. And I am trying to get my house up here, like windows fixed and things that needed to be done up here that I know are for sure.
Excellent.
I don't
Excellent.
know what's for sure in Florida. I know what I would like to happen, but and I feel that that's sometimes where, with that whole, that's what keeps shifting everything back and forth because I'm here, I'm there, I'm here, I'm
Yeah.
there. So my goal,
Yeah.
my focus is here, and then we can go to there. But I've done everything I could for down there.
Wonderful. 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 And in terms of the massage, acupuncture, how's that?
So my days have opened up a bit more. I'm actually going to be working basically Fridays and Mondays at
Oh,
acupuncture, and I'm going to be working Tuesdays and Thursdays now at the chiropractor. And everything up here still seems to be moving right along.
wonderful. 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 And any more well, I'm assuming at some point any more perceptions, energy, alternate energy perceptions, or just
Um, it's been pretty status quo, um, which is actually a good thing
yeah, yeah,
because I'm staying focused with right where I'm at here right now.
yeah, yeah. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. So what's on your focus, your agenda, where are where's your intent now?
To get my house right here where I'm at back together again. And I have a
Yeah.
guy coming out in a week to measure for windows because the windows are really bad in this house.
Mm,
And we have talked about it for years and I've just let it go. And my focus is to, because Patrick will be coming home in 6 months and because he'll be graduating from college.
ah,
So my intent is to get this particular house um back in order.
wonderful, 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 wonderful. Getting your house in order, that's always a good intent, right?
Yes.
Both literally and figuratively. So
Yes,
very
I'm letting go of stuff. And that feels really good. Like and
yeah.
what I mean by stuff is like furniture. I mean, we've gone through like all the little stuff, but I'm releasing furniture, big stuff to just make
Wow.
room for what is.
Wow. Wow. Excellent. Excellent. And then if you do move down to Florida, then and Patrick and the girls, then what happens with that in terms of who stays, what rent? How does
So right now, the way it would be is if we were to go down to Florida, Kevin and I would go down to Florida and the kids would actually stay here
now? Yeah, I'd imagine now.
because they have school and work up here and um maybe eventually after Kathleen's wedding and stuff, they may start renting our house from us if we decide to go down to Florida.
Yeah, wonderful. All right. So then that's also taken care of then. Oh, fantastic.
So there's definitely there's possibilities, but I don't feel where I've been before, which is yes, possibilities, but I'm trying to make this happen, that happen. I'm actually at a spot where I'm staying present.
Yeah. 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 That's what you want, right?
And plus, like like I told you, I'm still having some minor health stuff going on, so it makes me very tired.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, yeah, that can do, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm trying to be aware of that too, of my,
Yeah, it's important. It's very important.
but it's my energy because again, when we're talking about it's my energy,
Yep. Energy
so
management. Absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. Yeah, yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, just it makes us aware of the importance of energy management, right?
yes.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to emotional energy, you can so easy to waste that, yeah. And spend it without even realizing that we're spending it. Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Choice.
big thing is, switching my it was really interesting with that whole switching of my schedule around. I started my old habit of spinning my wheels and what would be the right word with that? Because that was definitely a habit.
Yeah.
Knew it where I start trying to make things happen or the way they're supposed, what I think they're supposed to look like, instead of just letting it happen organically. And I saw
Mm.
myself doing it. I felt myself doing
Steering.
it.
Steering. Yeah.
And then it just happened organically with the Monday, Friday for acupuncture. And it was, you know what? Yeah, Mondays and Fridays. And if I need to go to Florida, like I was trying to, instead of I just go away at these times,
Yeah.
I was trying to make it look like something instead of just letting it be.
Mm, mm, yeah. Yeah. The more trust in the universe, trust in the world, trust that things work out. Yeah. No need to micromanage everything. Yes.
Yes, maybe that's what it was. Maybe
Yeah.
I didn't realize it, but my habit of trying to micromanage was coming out.
Yeah. 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 Micromanagement usually is just a consequence of some sort of insecurity, right?
Yeah, I'm writing that down. because I think that's
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's very simple when you think about it, but it's not simple until you think about it, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. But it's a big deal. It's a big deal. You know, insecurity is a really terrible thing. It causes so many problems. It's astonishing. It really is a big troublemaker. It's astonishing. It really, really causes so much trouble. And really, what is insecurity but lack of trust?
That literally just went through my head.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yes, you can be insecure because you're incompetent, because you're ignorant, you're unaware. But you know, those things we sort of accept and deal with, and we know more or less. Okay, you can learn, you can figure stuff out. But trust is a different thing. So trust is something that we absolutely have to learn to acquire. And based on what? You know, trust is risk acceptance. People don't want to trust because they don't want to accept risk,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
You can't trust without accepting risk. It's automatic. It goes through, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. That was basically my last couple of weeks in a nutshell. I'm coming out of it right now, but
Yeah.
that was
Wonderful.
definitely the theme for the last 2 weeks.
Wonderful. 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 I mean, you're happy, yes?
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have some, focus. You know where you're going. You know what you're doing. Yes. You have some clarity of intent. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. That's the
Yes. And,
key.
and I guess I just sound sober, but just because I'm just being, I'm
Exactly. 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 And the key is to enjoy being, not doing. Right?
yeah,
If you enjoy being it, what difference does it make what you're doing? It's irrelevant because you enjoy being. Yeah.
absolutely.
Right. So it doesn't matter what you do. You can do anything. You're all good. I want to go look at the end of module one, session one, clarity of intent at the tasks and exercises. I don't know if you got a chance to
No,
write them out or not, but you've been living it, sounds like. So let's go and see. There we go. Yeah. All right. I'll screen share in a second. All right, so write down your personal intents for doing the Way of Impeccability program and your life intents. I think you did this, yes?
hmm
Make a list of all your beliefs which significantly impact your life. Yeah?
I think we did some of this.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And create another list of what activities or behaviors in your life take significant time and energy. So just to be aware of what impacts you, right? Not only in terms of what you want to do and what's important to you, but also beliefs and then those activities which drain your energy, like being irritated or being annoyed or bothered or whatever, worrying, stuff like that. And once you are more clear about these things in your life, then you've got something that that binds your life, that gives you that cohesion to move around and forward. Yes, you got focus. Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very important, a very important foundation that, and to go back to and to check them on a regular basis, uh, to check uh, your beliefs, check your intents, check your energy points, right? So we can say, just in a very basic way, on a regular basis, we want to check our intents, we want to check our beliefs, and we want to check our energy. You know, how are we using it? Where are we spending it? So anything to do with our energy. And when you're doing those, I mean, your beliefs can also take your energy, but not necessarily, because they sort of kind of static sometimes. You know what I mean? You know, that's why we split it up. And same thing with your intents. Yes, an intent does take energy too, but also it can be there. You've set it. It's up and running. It's going. You see, so it's not quite so active. So it's just good to be to keep those three in mind. You know, intent, belief, and energy. And then, you know, with beliefs too, you want to look at your associations as well. Because sometimes we don't realize that we believe something because we don't. It's just associated. See? Just kind of
Mm.
comes along for the ride. So it's very, very, very helpful to look at those specifically. Let's see. You know, under is kind of a sub-ending, under beliefs. And then, you know, energy management is all sorts of things. That's habit, which is looking to save energy, but really ends up taking more energy in the long run. Habits, right? Because they end up running when you don't need them. Then that's no good either. Then they take away deliberateness, and so yeah, they end up to be a poor usage of energy. So under energy, it's habits, moods, emotions, you know, physical routines, things like that. You know, mindsets, attitudes, all fall under energy management. Yes.
Okay. What was that one about the
Routines.
physical routine?
Yeah. You know, just like, okay, how you put your clothing on and stuff like this. You know, you may be doing stuff which, yes, you do it, but that's just the way you were taught to put your things on by, you know, your parent or caregiver or whoever. You know, way back in the day, somebody showed you how to do it, and it wasn't a particularly good way. They just did it that way, no good reason, and you end up still doing it that way.
Right.
So, yeah. And also, when you look at those things, the physical routines, you know, like how you comb your hair, with which hand, you know, where do you start? You start on the front, whatever. You know, when you start doing those things deliberately, they become incredibly powerful stepping stones to being fully and deliberately aware, right? So whenever you do those, set the intent to change those habits. We'll come to it a little later on again. And then they become a very useful association mechanism because they are so ever present in our lives. And, but we'll get to those. It's very cool. Yeah, it's very cool. We'll get to it in detail a little bit later on. All right. So I just want to go through module 1, session 2, you know, the specific practices, the things that we'll be doing, right? Because this is all about doing. And as you've come to see, you aren't just thinking about doing, you're actually doing things, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And you're not thinking about doing things either. You know, some people go even that far. They think about what they're going to think about, right? And they never get to doing. So this is it. It's all about the doing, right? So you'll be taking notes. Yes, you're already taking notes. Keep a constant and ongoing journal, right? This is powerful. I don't know if you've been doing this, but I would recommend you do this. A journal of what's going on inside you and what comes up inside you. In other words, the story of Robin's journey, Robin's life journey, right? So you're documenting where you at and things that change in you, things that are important for you, realizations, awarenesses. Like you know, it's a journal, but a specific journal of your life journey. So you could say, you know, recent entries would be, you know, that you've made peace with your father transitioning, and you've helping him to be at peace with transitioning, right? That's a big shift in terms of a mindset, that you ahead of the time, okay with what's to come, rather than it happens and then, well, now I've got to deal with it. and you go through the typical process, right?
Hmm.
Of, shoulds and supposed tos. You've shifted that entire whole process now. Yeah. I mean, you're not conforming to the usual, the conventionalities. You've preemptively set things up, and when it happens, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's part of life. You move on. It's all just natural, right? It's no big fuss and huff and drama and stress, right?
Yes.
Right. So that's a big shift. See what I mean in terms of your journal? This is a very profound shift of mindset, attitude, way of being, understanding, connectivity, attunement, everything. Yes. Furthermore, you trusting that things will work out okay. So that's involved in there. And then there is that being okay one way or the other. Your father could stay in this condition for years. I mean, it seems like it's shifting somewhere, but it might not. And that
Right.
too, you're okay with, right? So you're making peace with time. You're making peace with uncertainty. That's huge. You know how few people make peace with uncertainty? They just can't do it. Just can't do it. Messes them up, right? So, so this, keeping a journal of, and you can make backdated entries into your journal. It doesn't have to be current tense. You could say, this, I was thinking about this today, something that shifted in me, I don't know, a while back. And you write that down. It doesn't have to be linear. It's irrelevant, right? It's just a journal, a document of the life shifts of Robin. Yeah. If you think of it that way. Which are awarenesses, understandings, profoundnesses, epiphanies, realizations, all such things, right? And changes of behaviors, so self-proofs as well. It's a very big deal, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, very big deal. It's exciting. It's very exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So obviously you're already taking notes, so that's not a problem. But the journal, this is a different thing, right? There will be appropriate pauses all throughout our interactions. We want you to note internal feelings, perspectives, doubts, surprises, fears, questions, dislikes, likes, and whatever comes up, which is anything at all, no matter how fleeting and seemingly irrelevant. So this is a big shift. This is something that you've been doing, but we want to take it even further now, right? So to really take note of all those internal feelings, perspectives, doubts, surprises, fears, questions, dislike, likes, and whatever comes up, which is anything at all. And here's the key: no matter how fleeting and seemingly irrelevant. So it's shifting your awareness to be paying attention to everything that comes up inside you, regardless of how tiny. So it's a shift to paying attention to a greater level of granularity and detail. Yes?
Hmm.
Right. So this is part of the ongoingness of being more and more sophisticated. The more sophisticated we are, the greater our ability to pay attention and be aware of detail. Yeah. Granularity, and not only detail and granularity, but layeredness, right? The more layers we can see, the greater we are able to connect to the whole, no? And
Do
it
you know
is
I got a book? I don't know why this is coming up, but I got a book from just the airport when I was coming home with my daughter.
wonderful.
And do you know the name of the book? Because I just like the title of it, but it reminded me of Bina. Um,
Oh,
How I Became a Tree.
yes, 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 yes. So, I wrote that a whole long, kind of an extended uh, mythical type of a tale, part of the Biala series. And in that, it's about crossing over really the poem, moving into different realms. Anyway, and in the poem there, it's the aspirant is the key figure. She uses the term to tree as a verb, right?
Yeah.
So this is very powerful. When we learn to tree, it's incredibly potent, very, very powerful. So I love that. I love that. I love that it reminds you of Bina also. That's very cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you know what it reminded me of, like especially in the beginning, um, when we had done that one Zoom where she was drawing when
Yeah.
she was younger, and it just, yeah,
Yeah. 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 And she kind of comes out of the earth like that. Yeah. Bina's doing very well. She's very busy doing lots of things, but yeah, Bina very good. Very, 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 very happy and potent, and just enjoying the wonders and joys of life. So yeah, Venus so good. But yeah, to tree is to really take that mindset, that attitude of treeing. It's really potent. It's about being, but it's being with that such an incredible acceptance and trust. Yes.
absolutely.
So it's a very powerful mindset. Uh, and then this point that we're making now about paying attention to things like this now, see, the fleeting and seemingly irrelevant. There's very little that's irrelevant, really. We're connected to all of life, and the greater the more we can pay attention to this fleeting and seemingly irrelevant, the more we start to be aware of what usually is semi-conscious. Yes. I mean, some people will put it in the subconscious, but it's more semi-conscious. The subconscious implies we cannot access it, but of course we can, right? So I like to use semi-conscious. And the more we become aware of things going on inside us, that layered connectivity, things that are there by association, maybe a couple of steps removed, an association chain that we're not aware of the end point because, well, we're not looking at it all. So these are all things which massively help to see what affects us and what presses on us, what impinges on us without us even being aware of it. Yeah. So all those inadvertent assimilations that we've acquired, this is one of the mechanisms for becoming aware of them and paying attention to them. Yeah. So in other words, what we're doing is if you look at screen here, if I click on my task manager here, right? And it shows the processes, right? You see all the things running here now, right? And there's a lot
Mhm.
of them going on, right? So, okay, some of them I recognize Chrome and, but Skype I recognize, but there's a lot of stuff that's like, oh, what the hell is this? What the hell is this? So, like this, I don't know, it doesn't even give me anything here, whatever it is, right? So that's a very powerful thing to start to become aware of and to know what these things are. Yeah? Now I already know. Okay, it says there it's part of my graphics thing, but still, this is how we are as people as well. We have this underlying stuff, and we want to know what it is and why it's there, and say, okay, yeah, it needs to be there. So okay, I can. It's just accepted. It's part of being aware. All right. But other stuff's like, no, I don't need this. There's no reason for this, right? So, uh, getting that awareness of what's going on underneath is very powerful. Yeah. Okay. So none of the stuff, nothing is, and also to know this, right? Memory is grossly unreliable. What comes up in this way is like dreams. We always believe we remember, but we never really do. So be scrupulous in noting it down. It will quickly become easy and also less. The value of this practice is invaluable. So I really, really highly recommend this. Even if you, like some people, they not writing it down or typing it out or putting it on your phone, but still, you have a voice recorder on your phone, right? And if you just figure out how to use that, it's click, click, and you just say, okay, there you go. And you record it as a voice message, and later you can put it into your notes. But this is very useful. It's like dreams. when those things come up, those fleetingly, seemingly irrelevant things, like now with the that you said about the book at the airport, right? If you hadn't mentioned it, if I'd continued talking, or you went, well, down the road that becomes irrelevant or just fades away and it goes and it gets lost. Yes. So this is very useful to when things come up in you, to make a note of them, right? Get into that habit of making a note, because they're tenuous connections, and they're very, very tenuous and nebulous, and they don't really last. So it's very, very helpful practice, because it adds to your self-awareness, right? The more you start paying attention to those things, the more your brain says, oh, these things are important. And of course, you now raise and retrain your brain to be more aware of them. It starts feeding on itself. It's very, very powerful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Through emphasis. All right. The point of this is for our battle with habit. As a spirit warrior, when dealing with a deadly enemy, we need intelligence, information. We need to know that enemy by making notes of those feelings, ideas, thoughts, etc., which escape as we proceed. We get to know that hidden self, which is locked down by the habits of being we have accumulated. By knowing those habits of self more, we know how to deal with ourselves and tackle habit. So yeah, so all these little fleeting things that come up, they come from somewhere. The more we pay attention to them, the more we can start, we start to see the pattern, we start to see the connectivities, the associations, and we can start to figure things out that otherwise we couldn't do. So we're starting with this information gathering. Yeah.
You know what this reminds me of? Last night I watched I caught the end of it, but it was on Barbara Walters.
Oh wow, she's still going? Was this
No, she
old Barbara
passed.
Walters?
No, she passed away, but they were, I guess, going through her life. But what
Oh,
resonated with this was about how she would write questions and then write
yeah.
questions and then rewrite
Yes.
questions, in different
Yes.
orders.
Yes.
And this would be going on. So like, let's just say you use the Monica, they used, the Monica Lewinsky one. And they were just saying that that interview was in February, but they kind of knew about it in November. So
Yeah.
from November until February, there was just meetings and she would just be constantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this way, when she went in there, she knew what she wanted. She knew the order.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the same process here. She's using, she writes a whole bunch of questions. And then because the brain doesn't get to the where you want to end up with. So she uses those as a starting point and saying, well, what's wrong with these? How can I refine these? And then she makes a second layer and a third layer. And eventually she gets it so dialed in because she's been able to see the greater patterns and see what doesn't work and so on. So it's the same thing. When you start paying attention to things that come up into yourself as information, it's like any CIA or whatever, FBI. They get information, then they're going to analyze it. They're going to sort it and process it, follow up, get more information, follow up. Same process, right? It's being a life detective in essence. Yeah.
And it's practice, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Capital P practice. Yes. It's the practice of paying attention, the practice of thinking, of understanding, of being aware, of discerning. Really, that's what it's the practice of discernment. Very important practice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is also that we can tackle those habits which are, we have some habits that we aren't aware of even are habits. Yes. Things we do without even realizing that we do it, like assumptions, expectations, stuff like that. Yeah. You know, just default fears that come up, which of course insecurity is always about fear. Right. So we'll go over these notes and these journals will in when we come on Zoom, right? Um, so you also want to go over them, your notes that you take, but you already do this, just the notes you're taking from the Zooms, yeah, go through that. So actual application is a doing which transcends another great enemy, belief. And believing we know because it makes sense to us. This is the thing. We believe we know because it makes sense, but we don't actually test this and prove this. So application is about testing what we believe. Yes. Until we've tested it, it's just a belief. It's not real. Once we've self-proved it to ourselves, now it's not a belief anymore. Now it's a reality. Now it's a competence. Now it's an understanding. Now it's an awareness. Now it's something real. Now it's us. It's part of us. Yes.
Yes.
Now, right. So realizations are plentiful, coming and going with such regularity we hardly notice. But
That comes with a trust.
say again.
That comes with a huge trust factor.
What comes with a huge trust factor?
Well, if you're believing we know because it makes sense, but we need to self-proof it so it
Yeah.
becomes a reality, our understanding. We've really got to
Wow.
trust, because if it's not what we thought we believed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Exactly. Yes. Very astute. Yes. And that's why people don't want to do it, because it's too risky. They don't want to take that chance. They can't trust because they're not willing to risk. Because they go, yeah, but what if it doesn't work out? Well, then you find something else to do. They're willing to accept a compromise situation because they fear something. You already got the situation that's not exactly working. So what difference does it make? If it doesn't work, at least you know it doesn't work. See what I mean? It's one of those square circle fears. Quite fascinating. Quite fascinating. That's very nice. Right. So we want to get into this habit of paying attention so that we can apply, because through the application we can transform those beliefs, those realizations, those understandings, which all of them are, until they self-proven, just belief. We want to make those beliefs into actualities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a very different way to live. If you're living on, if your whole life is premised on beliefs, this is a bit hollow and a bit fragile, is it not?
Yeah.
And we've seen this with people. You've seen it, where those beliefs, life starts to build up, and eventually you can't hold on to that belief anymore. It collapses, and then slowly but surely the whole system starts to collapse, and then you end up with a worldview collapse. Now, and things just don't fit together anymore. And then you get all sorts of problems, right? And then the brain has to find all these peculiar ways of dealing with it and complicating it and, compensating and all this. And this is very problematic. Yeah. Yeah. Right. If we are doing and living and feeling the consequences and implications of our realizations, they're meaningless. Right? What's the point of having a realization if there's no consequence or implication, and you aren't living and feeling it and doing it, right? Which means we have to make our realizations and understandings into new habit. Yeah, capital H habit, which is deliberate habit. Yes, I may be doing something regularly, but it's a capital H habit. I'm doing it with deliberation. And that's the other point of this, right? So that when we're paying attention to all of these little things that are going on inside us, by paying attention to it, we are being aware of what they are. The moment I'm aware of some little tiny feeling, automatically there comes choice. So now, by being aware of it, I'm also choosing to maintain it or to keep it in, right? I'm choosing whether to, well, am I going to feel this or not, right? Whatever little tiny thing it may be, right? So now, though, you're shifting your life from just living willy-nilly and just being a leaf in the wind to living deliberately. It's a very, very, very powerful shift. Yes. The moment we start paying attention to those little tiny things that are going on inside us. Of course, they're little tiny because we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. But as we start to pay attention, oh, wow, there's a lot going on underneath here. Oh, And now we start to learn to live deliberately. We've got all these feelings and energies and all sorts of stuff going on. But when we do this stuff deliberately, it changes our lives, right? From being just whatever, being a whatever person to being a deliberate person, an empowered person. That's what makes the difference. Yes.
Absolutely.
Huge, huge, huge deal. Huge, huge deal. All right. This is why we're in a battle with habit, not only to defeat old habits, but to conquer habits so thoroughly that we can institute new habits, capital H habits, new habits we choose at will and change them as needed. This is power living. Yes, when we have the ability to institute and cancel habits as we desire, like on a computer, you can say, well, I need to set a little routine, I set a timer, whatever. You institute those things at your will deliberately. They don't just happen automatically. Well, sometimes they do in the computer and it kind of can mess things up. But when you're in charge of those things, it changes your whole ability to use the computer. Well, likewise with us, right? Really cool. Really, really, really cool. So, very powerful. What also you'll be doing via your personal journaling is to get to the point where you can thoroughly explain each PowerPoint of knowledge. So this is now, I'll put it into the overall year with journaling, but we'll get later on. This is just so people don't get overwhelmed when they start, but you already have a dictionary of power. So of course, your journal is becoming a little bit more sophisticated and specialized. So, you've got now, that's why I'm saying this additional to your regular notes and your dictionary of power to have this journal of Robin's life journey. But this point is being made about the dictionary of power. You want to have the ability when you add an entry into your dictionary of power, like for instance, trust. Yes, you want to say, what does trust really mean? What is capital T trust? And you want to be able to explain those terms to yourself. Well, you're going to use others as a test for this, but the more you can explain it, the more you understand it, right? And it's one thing to understand something inside our heads. It's another thing to understand it externally, which means we can explain it to somebody else. That level of empowerment that comes from explaining it to somebody else is incredible, right? Because we're shifting our understanding from a belief that we understand to a self-proof that we understand. So, so writing out the detailed understandings of your power terms. This is an exercise that even if you just take a couple every now and then, and you just start, taking the entry into the dictionary of power, whatever the term is, and you make that extended understanding. You write out in detail what exactly it means. This is incredible. And one of the most powerful reasons for this, Robin, is because of connectivity. Every single entry in your dictionary of power is connected to every other one. They're all interconnected, right? And this is a very big deal. So when you write out a detailed explanation of what the term, let's say trust now means, right? Capital T trust, and writing out exactly all the things that means, you're going to be connecting to intent and to energy and insecurity and risk and all of these things. See what I mean? It all starts to connect together, right? And the more connected you have all of those concepts, the more your life is coherent and makes sense and cohesive. Yes. Make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
So connectivity is treeness. When you've got everything really connected, and it's that yes, it's connected to the infinite, but there's enough connectivity to be complete. This is when you have self-satisfaction within you. You don't need to be getting external. You've got enough that's going on inside you. It's all connected, right? And it's dynamic, of course, too. It's working, but there's enough of it that makes the system work. If you have too little, there's not enough to make it work. And so you need to have enough, and the interconnectivities need to be going. It's kind of like the computer, it needs the CPU, it needs the RAM, it needs the memory, it needs the hard drive, it needs all these components. You can take some of them away, but it works better when they're all there and they're all nicely working and interconnected. So we want to have that same with us and with our conceptions, especially. They're very profound. When your conceptions are connected, it really works, right? Once we can fully explain something adequately in our own terms, only then does it fully become ours. This is the point and the purpose of your homework, to re-explain what you've come to know and understand for the purpose of checking and mastering your own understanding. Yeah. So going over the notes that you take, and then like the next time we come on to say, okay, I went over our notes, and like I did a Barbara Walters on it, I went into more detail, and this is, and now you share what that extra layeredness of it is. In the sharing the next time on Zoom, you're going to have a third layer of, or fourth, or how many ever, but another extra layer of detail and discernment and entrenchment and consolidation within you, right? So first you've got the awareness, you make a note of it. It's like, this is powerful stuff, I got to make a note of it. But then, a little bit later, you go over the notes that you've made from a session. And then you say, wow, what does this mean? Where does this go? How does this connect? And you write it out. You say, what's the moreness from this? Then you come on Zoom and you share these multiple layers. They are profound for shifting your innards and all of that connectivity inside you, and connecting that connectivity and getting that connectivity to be more fluid and interactive and adaptive and potent. It's an incredible power, right? And you also, of course, making these things your own and rewiring the brain through this repeated emphasis. So that's very wonderful about Barbara Walters, that you saw that. That's fantastic, because she did it with questions, but we can do it with conceptions. Same thing, anything can be made into a question. Do I understand this? And then you go, what does this mean? You just keep going. It's very, very powerful. So very, very powerful technique. That's right. We all remember Monica Lewinsky, but I wonder how many people remember Barbara Walters was the one to really put that. She got that big interview. Everybody was, there was
Yeah.
Diane, somebody. They were all gunning for it, right? There was a whole bunch of them. These like big shot woman interviewers, right? You remember them, right? There was a whole
Yeah. And
bunch of
that's why
them.
it was,
Yeah.
I vaguely remembered all of that, but it was just, and look at how that was the one out of everything that stood out to me last night.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, Barbara Walters was the powerhouse there, and she was so kind of mellow in a way. She was powerful, but she walked softly but carried a big stick, you could say.
Yes.
But now why she was so potent, because of what she did behind the scenes. I mean, all those people do stuff, or most of them, I should say. But it's nice to get to know her specific technique, which is a discernment technique, and not accepting that the brain, thinks it knows what it knows. You think your question is good, but you've got to test it. That's what she was doing. In that layering, she's testing her questions and really checking. She was being absolutely impeccable. She was checking to see if these questions are what she believes them to be. Yeah. So she starts off with a belief in the questions, then she checks them. Well, no, okay, not so much. She has another layer. Okay, that takes those until it gets where she's thinking her questions through to the end, but she can't go any further, right?
Absolutely.
Very powerful, very powerful. She turned out all right, poor Monica. I felt sorry for her. She was really just, the universe sort of using her, and all the things came on her. It's like, man, ignorance and unawareness. You see the price of ignorance and unawareness being paid with her. But she turned out all right. She turned out all right. Yeah. Right. So this is all, again, just saying you understand will never be enough. You'll be required to demonstrate such understanding, and know this very well also, that so often we believe we understand and truly do so, but when it comes to demonstrating that understanding, it escapes us, leading to a lack of self-assurance, which you absolutely have to have as spirit warriors. So this point of taking it not as a question, but as a statement, to say, here's what I believe. And then you say, well, do I really know what I'm talking about? like you could say, well, okay, here's what I believe. You write, you know, you share some things from your dictionary of power. So somebody say, yeah, but what does that really mean? Now you're stuck. See, so going that extra step to say, all right, here's what I believe, here's what it means, here's what the meaning means, and you know, you do that same process of the refining the questions, but you doing it with understanding, refining your understandings, right? So you get that detailed granularity so that you can apply these things when you know them down to that level. Look at Barbara. She was saying, I could ask those questions, but they won't be very effective, right? So she refined it to a point of effectiveness. Yes? Isn't that what she was doing?
Absolutely.
And that's huge, is it not? So we want to do this with our understandings, with our awarenesses. We want to refine them to a point of actual practical application, doableness, right? Usableness, value, right? We want to get value and usefulness. It's no good just to have this grand concept, you know, I don't know, whatever it is, you know, capital T trust. So it's a nice idea, but what does it mean? How do I use it? How does it apply in my day to day, my minute to minute, my second to second? Yes. Very important. Very, very important. Right. If we are not confident in our ability to learn and that we actually have learned, then we'll be lost and inhibited. Thus, we have to prove to the inner self by a demonstration we really and actually have learned, capital L, learning this. Now, since we're redoing this, you already do know this. I would recommend that you make a wall poster for yourself, which says, I can do the impossible because I have done the impossible. Isn't that true for Robin?
Hmm.
Right? It may be a small little thing that you considered impossible, maybe very tiny, but it doesn't matter. Right? If you've done it once, you can do it again, right? So, no matter how small that impossible was, you can say with confidence, I can do the impossible because I have done the impossible. This is the potency of self-proof. Yes. Or you can say change. You don't have to say impossible, right? I can change because I have changed. Therefore, I will change. Yeah. You can say with understanding, I can understand because I have understood. Therefore, I will understand. Right. So this when we actually do, it becomes that I have done it, which means I can do it, which means I will do it. So this is incredibly powerful, as opposed to people who they can't really say I have done it with full honesty. They just, well, I believe I could have done it. Big difference, right? Yeah. It's not even close. Yes.
I like that.
No. When you just say, well, I think I could have done it. I'm pretty sure I can. Well, I'm confident I could have done it. I have done it. Yeah. Right. I mean, imagine you're on a talk show, right? And we're talking about, you know, whatever it is that you're going to do, you know, climbing Everest. Oh, I'm pretty sure I could do it. Sure. No problem. You know, yeah, but have you done it? Right. You see, doesn't matter. You need to know for yourself. Now, okay, you know, we're talking with other people, but at some point, now, to be fair to that person who says, I can do it, and they say, well, based on what? You say, well, you know, I've climbed, I don't know, 24 other huge, great big mountains, you know, there's very little difference. You know, Everest is maybe 5%, a little bit more. So what? You know, I did it, I had energy to spare, you know, so I know that because of my experience of having done enough of this, that for me to know that I can do this, well, there's no big shake to this. It's like just a duh, right? I mean, it's like I know I've driven from one city to another. Well, doesn't mean I can only drive to that city. No, I can extrapolate. So I can drive to any city once I've driven, you know, a long distance. Once you've done it once, you know you can do it again. So it doesn't have to be exactly the same repeat. So the person can say, well, yeah, I'm totally entitled to say I can do it because I've climbed K2 or whatever, you know, all these other big math. So, right. So that's the value of the self-proving, because at some point you can say, I've done enough to be able to extrapolate that I can do what I haven't yet done. And I know I can do it. And I can say so with 100% confidence, correct? You don't have to go and do everything to know that you can do it, because you've done enough to justify knowing that you can. Yes. And that's where the connectivity comes from again. When everything is connected, we can extrapolate from our experiences. Yeah. But we
Mhm.
need those anchor points. We need those anchor points of self-proof. Yeah. Many people, most people I know don't have that in their lives. They don't have these self-proven anchor points where they can say with absolute 100%, I have done it, right? This is real to me. Most of their lives are based on beliefs, which makes for a very shaky life, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. It's a big point. Very, 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 very big point. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have to
Sorry.
prove our inner self by a demonstration. We really and actually have learned. Capital R learning. That's what we want to know. The only way to prove that we have learned is through application. Yes. Through demonstration. Now, some things are learning, it's abstract. And you say, well, how do I prove capital T trust? One way you can do this is by writing it out, you know, by expressing it, by explaining it. And that's a way to apply and prove and demonstrate your understanding. See? So it's not the trust that you necessarily, because you don't always have that opportunity, but you can demonstrate, you can prove that you understand. And when it comes to abstract conceptions, this is incredibly powerful. So this is where, you know, you go and you do that layeredness, right? You take whatever the awareness was, whatever the PowerPoint was that came up in the Zoom while you were doing the course, going through it, and then you write it down, and then you write it out in detail, and then you come and you share your takeaway of what it was that was important for you. So it could be a 2 or 3 layered steps, like Barbara, right? Like take a point earlier, you made a point. You made a note about insecurity. So, you know, maybe tomorrow, day after, whenever you write out, you reshape that, and you go into detail, you know. Okay, insecurity, what does it mean? How do I understand it? What is all the implications? What are the consequences, etc.? Right? You write it out in detail. Right. So that's step one. Then you come and you share that on Zoom with me next time. You're going to see that in the sharing, more comes even. And you, in that sharing with me, you demonstrating, man, I really get this. I really know this. And I'm proving to myself that I know it, that I understand it, that I've got it. This point about insecurity, whatever it was, right? This is huge. This is huge. So you see what I mean by the application being the understanding and the expression of your understanding, the demonstration of your understanding is a self-proving application when it comes to abstract points. It's very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. We're moving into a different realm of being. Yes.
Yes.
Very, very powerful. All right. So this is you know, this whole module here is all about things that we want to be doing, you know, specific practices. And a very specific practice is your practice finishing your sentences, both your verbal sentences and the sentences in your mind. I cannot emphasize enough how transformative this simple practice is,
Yeah, that's huge.
both verbally and internally, mentally. Finish them, finish them. Yes, sometimes it takes quite a bit of doing to finish them. But look at Barbara. She finished those questions. She finished those sentences, right? When she wrote that question, the first set of questions, that first list, those were all unfinished. It might as well be an unfinished sentence. She knows it's unfinished, right? So she said about finishing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something. But look at the power of something that you, that fleeting thing that came up. Yes. You mentioned this fleeting thing, but you made the point to specifically say about it, right? And look at the power of that. It's become the theme of our Zoom.
Oh yeah.
Isn't that incredible? Attunement. When we start paying attention and we notice the stuff, it's like, man, there's so much moreness that comes from it. And you know, because it's stuck in your head with Barbara, you know, I'm using it as an analogy and figuratively, right? Because I'm deliberately doing this because it's now a demonic device. I'm using it because it's easy to associate. Unfinished sentences, Barbara questions, unfinished questions, same thing, right? So the brain is easy to remember the power of what we are looking to do here, right? Carrying on, taking things through to the end, which is really what she was doing, thinking things through to the end, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So finishing your sentences is practicing thinking things through to the end. And when you do it internally, oh, this is a big deal. and when you do it with questions, this is an even bigger deal. So yeah, it gives that clarity of intent. She knew exactly what she was about. The more she refined her questions, the more she refined what she was trying to accomplish with her interview, correct?
Yep.
So it was all about clarity of intent. See how it all works together. Isn't that incredible? When we make a habit of finishing our sentences and our thoughts, we not only practice the application of thinking things through to the end. Hey, see, there's a, did you see, did you notice it there? There we go. Thinking things through to the end. We also come to see how often we have half-formed thoughts which lead nowhere, but we just assume they are valid. This is a massive, massive, massive point. This basically blew my mind when I first discovered this. I had these thoughts and like, you know, okay, I'm thinking it and I take it, well, it's going somewhere. I assume they're valid. But when I actually thought them through to the end, I'm like, no, you know, this is a lot of crap. But what scared me was that had I not thought it through to the end, I would never have been aware that it didn't go anywhere, that it imploded, that it collapsed, that it was, you know, wasn't valid. I had assumed that my thoughts were valid, those unfinished thoughts. Yeah, and that assumption of validity, this scared me. And I said, nope, this I will not do. I will never take anything based on assumption, unless I have to, of course. Um, so this is scary to realize that, you know, we could really believe, truly, really be convinced that things are valid, these unfinished thoughts, right? Like Barbara could have just assumed the original questions were valid, right? I mean, they might not be, you know, directly invalid, but they don't go anywhere. They don't lead anywhere. And she could truly have believed that and gone into that on that surface level of questions. And of course, the interview would have been a disaster, right? So, I mean, that's how she got to be good, because she didn't do that. Others, obviously, they didn't get very far because they had those disasters, right? So we're seeing the end result there. But I mean, isn't that a scary thought, to realize that we can truly believe those assumptions, that our thoughts and ideas are valid, right? So finishing a sentence and a thought forces us to be aware of these shadow thoughts, which we only believe are real. Further, we acquire the benefits of improved expression and clarity of mind. Clarity of mind, clarity of intent. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Very, very powerful. Very, very, very powerful. Yeah. All right. So a part of this too, and it's very good practice, which I don't emphasize and press enough. But when you're asked a question, write down the question. It's incredible. Write down the question itself. The moment you write down that question, it changes your brain. It gives that question extra emphasis, extra validity, extra power, extra importance. And through that, the brain automatically says, oh, this question must be important because you wrote it down. Now your brain starts firing up and it makes your ability to answer the question so much better. It's incredible. Very simple leveraging technique. It gives you clarity on the question itself. So Barbara Waltering again. So it's excellent for emphasis, helps to implant the questions in your mind. At the same time, it stimulates the nodes in your mind, bringing up answers. A very powerful technique for helping you answer a question. Really, really, really incredible. So don't just think about your questions, write them down. But especially if you asked one, write that down too.
That's exactly where I was going with that.
And then, of course, get into the habit of asking, right? So these are all things that you want to do. You'll ask whenever you understand or want to know more. If you made all the efforts that you can make and you get to a blockage point, ask. Yes, ask. You know, I see this regularly. How later someone gets comfortable with asking about what they're ignorant about. And man, if they'd done it earlier, it would have saved them so much tons of troubles. Now, you don't have a problem with this, you ask, so not an issue. But I see this all the time where people can't ask, and then it compounds. They don't ask, and they assume they know, like we said before, and they don't think it through. And now they just believe that they know, and of course they start building these massive, great big edifices, which are don't have a foundation. And it gets them into real incredible trouble. It's a big mess. It's a massive, massive mess. So another practical technique, right? So on questions, I'll bet you anything that Barbara is prepared for multiple answers as much as possible. Yes.
Mm.
But part of her refining the question was to ask questions to which it becomes difficult to give multiple answers.
Mm-hmm.
So she knows where she's at. But what we want to do on the converse is to develop the ability to provide multiple answers, because we trained, the teacher asked the question in the class, right? Which teacher ever in your life ever asked for multiple answers? They looked for an answer, always. What's the answer? The answer, one, right? Imagine if your teacher had said, okay, here's whatever is, Johnny goes to the market and this and that. And okay, so what are the possible different answers? And now you're practicing perspective shifting. Imagine if you've got to come up with 6 or 10 different things that it could be. Wouldn't that have been incredible for your brain?
Oh yeah.
Because isn't that what life is? Is there seldom things how often do things happen for just one reason? As far as I can see, almost never. But we have come into this habit of only looking for one, and then we find one, and then we make it the one. And by that elevation, all the other reasons suddenly become irrelevant. Is that true? No, it's not. It's an artificial elevation of one answer over the others. It's complete and utter nonsense, it's like, why are you in love with somebody? Just think that question, right? You ask the average person, why are you in love with, why are you with the person? And they'll give you an answer. Is that the only answer? Well, of course, when you say that, well, no, there's more. But in their minds, this is the reason. And now it gets an artificial importance. I mean, this is 101 reasons why you're with somebody, right? But it's amazing. So this getting into the habit of providing multiple answers, this is very important. This is really, really cool. This is really awesome. And it also breaks the habit of either or, right? Because typically, okay, it's either this or that. I mean, most people can, when you ask, well, is there more? They'll just give you the opposite. But that's black, white. You miss all the colors. We want to learn to see the colors, right? Right. So you'll constantly look at matters from as many perspectives as possible. This has to become a new habit. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, imagine this
All
picture
right.
here.
Yes, but this brings up now for me, is this where I get caught in my immersion bubbles?
How do you mean?
Because am I looking from two? So when I mentioned about that, I saw my habit of trying to do this, trying to do that. Am I trying to look at too many perspectives and it's actually, for me, hindering me versus just sticking with just allowing this to happen and see if this works? I'm too busy looking for too many possibilities.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So it's not looking at the possibilities that's the issue. It's deciding on one of them that's the issue. Right? It's acting on them. The way so when you see all the possibilities and you don't know which it is, instead of getting overwhelmed, you say, well, there's a lot of choices. Whichever one is going to happen, I'm going to trust, and through attunement, pay attention and see what comes. And then I'm ready, because as soon as something says, okay, some little tiny thing in the world around me, it connects. So, oh, okay, well, it connects to this one. All right, there we go. I take this one. Right? I have choices ahead of me. So it's about the decision-making process and how you act on those. And you know, sometimes it doesn't matter. There are multiple choices. You can do it in whichever way you choose. It doesn't matter. And it's just pick anyone. And this is a skill we want to develop. The ability to pick anyone. To truly be able to pick at random. Well, let's just say, for argument's sake, you're going into a client, right? There are many ways you can do a massage, right? Many ways to do a massage. Now, you've probably figured out which ones you like best, but let's assume all those different ways were all even to you. And you say, well, I'll just pick one at random. But typically when we pick at random, there's some deeperness, some moreness inside us that we're not awareness that helps us make that random choice. And if it is random, it doesn't matter. But typically our random is very seldom all that random. It's quite amazing. Does that help, Robin?
Yeah, well,
To not get overwhelmed by choices, to say being able to see many is not a downside, because it's the problem with having too many choices is when people say, but what's the best one of this? That's where they get stuck.
mhm.
There isn't the best. Anyone is good, or not necessarily, like all these bubbles. Wow, they're pretty even. But, you may have, out of all these bubbles, 5 or 6 that are by far, better, like in terms of massage techniques, right? But, some of them, they don't work very well. They're not very reliable, whatever, right? But you got, 5 or 6 that, well, any one of them is okay. So does it matter which one I choose? No. All right, depends on what I feel like. Maybe today I feel like this, maybe today I feel like that. Okay. So there's a reason for doing it. It just gives you a greater flexibility to associate those choices and pick one that is appropriate in the moment. Not best, but appropriate in the moment. That's a very different thing to best. Best is a predetermined assumption of what is going to be appropriate. How would you know possibly ahead of time? You don't know the circumstances, right? So we get stuck with having too many choices when we start to look for the best one. That's where we get overwhelmed, because you cannot actually make the best decision ahead of time, because you don't know what's going to happen. So you want all these choices. When the circumstance comes, you pick the one that's most appropriate at the time. Or you just say, well, anyone is good. I'll just pick at random. And you trust that random. And well, you just know it doesn't matter. But also, you know that by picking at random, you're giving your subconscious an opportunity to come into things. Yeah.
Mhm.
Does that help, Robin?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's huge. It's huge when you look at it from this point of view. It's a profoundly different way of doing. So Barbara, by doing all those questions, right? She's now aware. She's got 100 questions in her data bank. Yes, she's refined it to what she's going to start with, because she's forced to start somewhere. But as the interview goes along, you know, she might say, whoa, you know what, I got to back up a little bit and, you know, I'm going to use these questions instead. Yeah, she's got all that flexibility at her command, right? She's got those choices and options to be appropriate, in other words. So when you think of multiple choices, multiple perspectives as being a greater arsenal of appropriateness, this is fantastic. And also giving yourself the opportunity to do things randomly. Because when we do that, sometimes I have no idea. All right, I just picked at random. I wouldn't necessarily have chosen this because, well, I'm in the habit and, you know, so, but okay, I'm doing it because, well, there's no reason not to do differently, right? Instead of doing the same thing all the time. So now you do things change just for the sake of change because, well, it doesn't really matter, right? They're all the same. But in doing it differently, you potentially connect to more connections that you wouldn't otherwise have connected to. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, think of it this way in terms of when you're driving somewhere, right? Many ways to drive there. Now, yes, you could technically work out the shortest route. But the shortest route, is it the quickest route? Let's say you're driving across a city, right? A big city. Sometimes the shortest route, you know, from what your GPS will tell you, they'll also tell you, oh, don't go this way because, well, there's, you know, traffic jam, slow traffic, whatever. It's going to take you a very long time to go this short route. So it's maybe shorter in distance, but not shorter in time. Yeah. So you want that other options, those choices. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we consider this, and now too, what I'm saying is, so now when we say, okay, what are my choices here? It's distance versus time. And so now you've got half a dozen routes, which all more or less give you the same time. So now you can add other factors into it to say, well, you know what, if I'm going to be driving an hour or an hour and 5 minutes, what do I care? It's not really that big a difference. But the difference between the two routes is, okay, the hour and 5 minutes one may be shorter, I say fuel, or it may be slightly longer, but it's more scenic. See, we can bring in other factors. So we forget that when we only factor for one or two things like, you know, distance or time. What about enjoyment? Yeah. Okay, I'd rather drive that in daily commute and drive 5 minutes longer, but love the drive every day. See? Choices are very powerful. Yeah. So getting into this habit of being able to perspective shift. We don't always have to do it, but once we start to have it as a habit, it's something that we can do no matter what. And that's always a important thing, right? Always that ability to be able to see multiple perspectives. This is incredibly powerful. This is what empowers us very literally, right? We see what others don't see. We see the moreness, we see the depth, we see the interactions, the connectivities, yes? Without becoming overwhelmed, of course, right? That's the issue for you, right, Robin?
Yeah, that's what usually happens to me.
Yeah. But again, see, now you have a thing to say. You're only overwhelmed because you're looking for the best one of those. Take out the best and say, it doesn't matter. It's about appropriateness. The best, I cannot ever determine the best. It's what's appropriate. That's what's best. And that's going to change. That's going to vary. And sometimes things are even. So they're all the best. This mindset of looking for the best is very, very limiting, and it causes all sorts of problems and bottlenecks. Yeah. Because how do you determine the best? I see people get messed up with this all the time. One of the reasons for insecurity, trying to determine the best.
Yeah, but that's a habit in itself of just always like getting caught up in that immersion of the best.
Exactly. All right. So I think we want to just stop right there. This is a very good point to stop on, right? This understanding that, you know, all of these things that we talked about, all about choices, understanding, layered, nuance, connectivity. And when we connect it to this understanding that we do have this profound habit of looking for the best, because that's what's implied when the teacher says, ask a question and she's looking for the answer. It's not said directly, but it's implied. They're looking for the best answer. And sometimes the best answer is not so. There's 6 different things that could be the best. They're all equally good, and it doesn't matter what you choose, right? So it's like saying, what's the best thing to eat for your next meal?
Yeah.
You're really going to mess you. Some people do this. I mean, just think about how that's going to mess you up. How are you going to determine this, right? And let's assume that there is a best for your next meal and you don't know what it is and you choose wrong. So what? By choosing the second or the third or the fourth best, you're going to now, let's assume you needed magnesium and you picked stuff in your diet, that whatever the next meal is, none of those things have magnesium in it. All that's going to do is make the need for magnesium a bit higher, which means that the next time you choose your meal, you're going to have more of an appetite and a desire for magnesium. Yes, you needed magnesium 0.001% more than you needed phosphorus, whatever, right? So it was so even that technically it was the best, but in practice it made no difference really. But by not choosing that, you're going to create the need for it, and then you're automatically going to choose it the next time. You see what I mean? It doesn't matter. The choices are self-correcting because it's all flexible and dynamic. We get hung up on this best thing. Yeah, and we really get stuck with it. Like it's why a writer's block, for instance, they're trying to write the best sentence. They're trying to write the perfect sentence. It doesn't exist. And of course you can't go any further. Yeah, same artist, anything. This best mindset is a terrible, terrible mindset. It gets us stuck. Right? So when
Yeah.
you say you're getting stuck, it's not because you have too many perspectives. It's because you don't know how to choose between them. It makes a difference. You know, any story, any writer who's written enough will tell you that there is no start to a story. You can start anywhere, right? You can always add more. You can always go sideways. The key is to start, to try and find the start. They're going to mess your brain up and you'll never get started because there's no such thing. Same thing with the best, right? So when you think of this decision making as writer's block, because they're looking for the best, right?
That's awesome.
And also to start your story, you have to pick one. You have to pick one place to start. There is no ideal place to start. You just have to pick a spot and start and go from there. Yeah, it's very awesome. Very, very awesome.
All right. Well, listen, you have a great day. Unfortunately, I do not have any other time this week because we bring back Patrick this week. But
That's
but I'll be ready to go for next Monday. So
wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, again, too, you know, if you do find that you have time, you know, like on any other day, or especially on weekends, say, okay, we can get together. It's not a problem, right? You know,
I'll just Zoom you and ask if you're available. Message you.
exactly. So, and I love that, you know, I love that. Appropriateness.
All right.
Yeah,
You have a fantabulous day.
oh, you too, Roman. You too. Too
All right.
fantastic.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye, Roman. Bye-bye. Most wonderful.